Welcome to the first episode of the Adventures of the Maiden family. There are a few rules for this run. We'll start with two pawns of similar age, one male and one female, that will hopefully become parents for our family. We cannot recruit anyone who isn't directly related to our starting two pawns. The only exception to this is the ability to temporarily recruit potential suitors for any cousins, aunts, or uncles that may join. If a marriage occurs, the suitor can stay. If not, they have to go. The goal of the run will be to join the Empire and escape the planet using their ship. They're starting with a fluid ideology to allow for changes to the family over time. Our first character is Amelia Flay. Amelia is a 19-year-old female. She grew up as a foundry apprentice in an industrial world. Much like anyone else who worked in the foundries, Amelia has considerable experience in construction and manufacturing. She also has an interest in learning how to cook, but so far barely knows how to prepare the most basic dish. Unfortunately, she's a slow learner, so it'll take quite a while to build up her skills. She's kind with a bloodlust, so sure, she'll murder you, but at least she'll be really nice about it. Our second character is Jake Sennett. Jake is an 18-year-old male. He grew up as a shelter child and has very little experience in the outside world. He's got a little bit of knowledge about medicine and has a natural affinity for research. He enjoys conversation, but as of yet doesn't have much experience interacting with others. Jake has a great memory, but all of his skills are so low to begin with, you might not see much of a return on that. The two colonists arrived on the planet as friends, and now we get to see whether or not that actually develops into anything. The first thing they'll need to do is set up a shelter. Luckily, Amelia is pretty well suited for this task. Building new facilities was part of the work she did back in her industrial homeworld. But I'm not sure she's ever built a house out on the rim. I guess there's a first for everything. Since Jake grew up in a pre-built structure, there's never any chance to build anything new, so he can't help out much in that regard. But at least he can help haul things around. A little manual labor is always required in a colony. Luckily, they started out right next to an old ruin that can be converted into their first shelter. It's going to take a bit of work to clean it up, make it safe. It's not the easiest work when they are both still sick, having just woken up from cryptosleep. The food they started with should last them long enough to get this thing put together. Let's just hope they can keep it down long enough to finish their first project. They're going to need more resources than what they started with. There aren't many trees outside in the shrubland, but there's enough to get them through the first week or two. One of their first priorities is going to have to be sourcing building materials other than wood. Amelia knows enough about construction to avoid building too much out of wood anyway. The last thing she wants is for all of her hard work to burn down around her. Concrete floors will be good enough for a basic shelter, and there's plenty of steel around to build out of. And hey, at least concrete isn't flammable. It's going to get awfully messy, but Jake needs something to do anyway. He can clean up after everyone. For now, Jake will be the leader of the colony, so that he can give work drive to Amelia. He also has a slightly higher social, which can be quite useful for leader speeches. Since this isn't a traditional colony, there won't necessarily be a true leader, but since it'll help build the relationship, we'll let it slide for now. Other than just naturally interacting, the best way for them to get a relationship boost is going to be those leader speeches. Let's hope Jake can impress Amelia enough with those speeches. If you ask me, it seems like an awfully awkward way to start a relationship, but whatever works. I'm not sure if by this age Jake has ever had a relationship before, so this is going to be a learning experience for him. The starting shelter is coming along nicely. The walls are up and the floor is in, but there's still no electricity or lights. They're going to become miserable pretty quickly if they aren't given at least a few luxuries, although I'm not sure it's fair to call light a luxury. For now, they still have plenty of food left, so instead of worrying about cooking, let's focus on mood. Looks like there's a derelict power generator outside their shelter. They can rebuild it to start providing power to their new home. There isn't a lot of wood on the map to use, but they can make it work in the short term with a basic wood power generator. It should last them at least a few weeks until they can replace it with something more permanent. They've only been here for a few days, but already they're becoming friends. This is a good sign. If at this point they were starting to hate each other, then there might be a few problems going forward, but a budding friendship means there's a chance to start this family. Jake did try to woo Amelia already by describing her as a lovely lake. She completely ignored him, which is a pretty hilarious response. Immediately after, they started talking about bitter foods, and that strikes me as somehow related to this attempt. The chance of starting a romance by forcing an attempt is pretty low, so it's best to wait until their friendship develops more. These two are already starting to run out of room. The shelter isn't very big, so it's time to fix that. This was going to be a hallway to use for defense, but instead it makes sense to knock down the wall and expand the main room. That should make it a little bit less cramped for now. Now they finally have a little light in here. It's much better than trying to survive in a pitch black stone box. We're also going to need air conditioning in here soon, but one thing at a time. Another early objective for them is going to have to be to get the impressiveness of this room up. It will serve as their bedroom, dining room, and recreation room, so it'll benefit them to increase the impressiveness in here. Jake keeps flirting with Amelia in the weirdest ways possible. This time it was by telling her a story about training worms. I can't imagine how he thought that was going to work. Amelia was having none of it, and now they aren't even friends anymore. At least they're still on speaking terms and have been having conversations about raincoats and board games. Well, it's better than training worms. Jake is going to have to make up for these botched attempts with a speech. I wonder how he's going to top the trained worms bit. It was an encouraging speech, so at least he made up for his failures a little bit. They're still short of being friends, but at least he didn't say anything stupid. Jake is going to need to start hauling stone chunks, and so Amelia can process them into cut blocks in order to give them a decent supply of blocks to build new walls with. They're going to need plenty of space in the near future. So far, Amelia and Jake have been rebuilding their friendship since the worms debacle. They aren't quite friends again yet, but that's okay because they're headed back in the right direction. Truth is, sometimes two pawns decide they're just not going to like each other no matter what you do. But it looks like that isn't happening here. In fact, it looks like Amelia has even attempted to start a relationship with Jake, but now he's the one not interested. Turning his back on Amelia is harsh. I think maybe he's still sore about his worm story not impressing her. He's never going to live that down. It's time to name our family and our colony. They haven't married yet, so they don't have a family name. Instead, let's name the family after the area they live in. In this case, Mabum makes for a good choice. They'll be the Mabum family. And Alpacas Township seems like a wonderful name for their family estate. And again, they don't even have alpacas. Maybe we'll have to fix that later. Now they have a little bit of recreation to pass the time. Chess and horseshoes will be enough for now since their options are limited. Between Jake and Amelia, I wonder who's the better chess player. They'll have plenty of time to practice at least. By the time children show up, they'll be able to crush them, show them who's the best chess player. The next step after recreation is going to be research. Other than getting new family members, they're going to need new research to protect and grow the family. In fact, they can work towards fertility procedures to help speed up the growth part of things. It would be a bit awkward to start a family before a relationship, so we can't get too far ahead of ourselves, but hopefully by the time the tech is ready, the relationship will be too. This is the first threat these two have faced, and it's just an angry rat. At least that's a very RimWorld problem to have. Jake trying to hit the rat in the dark with a rifle is a bit of a joke, but at least they can punch it to death. Aw, Jake is tending to Amelia's bruises. How sweet. Hopefully this at least helps to mend their friendship. It's very awkward that these two are here barely surviving and a group of traders have decided to post up and open up shop just outside their home. It's not as if these two freshly crash-landing colonists have anything to trade with them. The worst part is they're coming inside uninvited and helping themselves to the dining table. Although Amelia does have an interest in cooking, for now neither one knows how to actually do it. So they've decided to go with the safer option and install a nutrient paste dispenser. At least they can eat paste until one of them learns how to cook. It looks like these two have finally become friends again. It took a few days of awkwardness after the whole worm training incident, but they got there. Their chance to start a relationship with forced romance is still very low, but it's much better than it was a few days ago. Let's hope this direction continues and we can finally get these two together and begin a family. Finally, the time has come for the colony's first raid. Fortunately, this one's a very simple one since it's just a single genie who thought it was a good idea to attack alone with nothing but a club. Looks like all it took was a couple shots from Amelia's revolver to deal with it. Oh, looks like they had a friend follow behind them. Would have been a bit smarter for them to attack at the same time, but I don't think Jake or Amelia are going to complain about the stupidity of the raiders. It looks like Amelia was the one to finish this one off too. Another raid that ended as quickly as it started. Unfortunately, the relationship between Jake and Amelia is still pretty low. They haven't been able to get past the initial stage of being friends. It seems like something or another keeps popping up to kill the progress they start to make on their friendship. It looks like this time around it was Jake trying to flirt with Amelia by impishly questioning her hands. Let's be honest, I don't know what Jake was thinking on this one. Who exactly was that going to work on? Now I can understand why the relationship was dropped back to acquaintance. That's okay, I'm not giving up hope on these two. I think there's still a spark here that we can work with. It looks like Amelia has an inspired creativity. Let's put that towards something useful by making a double bed that they may potentially share one day. I'm not sure if it's being a bit overly presumptuous to pre-build a bed for pawns that aren't even together, but who cares? Let's go for it anyway. A masterwork bed will be very useful later on down the line. The name of this work of art is Amelia for Black. I'm not exactly sure what the name implies, but the description reads, "This furniture bears a portrayal of an impressive orange-scorched stone, lying in a cracked crater. Amelia looks on in surprise. The subjects are in front of 8 corn cobs. This portrayal tells the story of a meteorite impacting near Amelia City on 5th of April, May, 5500. I don't even know where to start with this one. Let's just not dig too deep. The last host has come asking for a little help. They're only looking for 37 silver. I don't think our 2 colonists will ever miss 37 silver, so let's go for it. The colonists aren't quite in a position to be charitable, but I suppose that's the most important time to be charitable. Let's hope the lost host remembers this later when the colony needs the help in return. They've almost got their nutrient paste machine built, but they're running pretty low on resources. They're gonna hate eating this stuff, but when you've crashed on a distant planet and there's only 2 of you, you do what you have to do. Let's give them a little time to gather some resources for expanding the base. After a bit of resource gathering, they've accumulated enough to finish their nutrient paste dispenser and also get a decent little stockpile going. There's still a large amount of slag sitting around the map, and they can make use of it. They're going to need a smelter to melt it down and turn it into usable steel. After putting paths in and getting this paste dispenser going, they're going to need more steel. The slag should provide quite a bit for them. Amelia got caught outside by a small rabid animal again. This seems to be a recurring pattern. At least Jake has a moderate amount of experience tending to these sort of wounds. There must have been a lot of rabid bunnies in the shelter he grew up in. After tending to her wounds, it looks like Jake and Amelia finally have a strong enough relationship to try to manually begin a romance. Let's give it a shot with a 32% chance of success. 1 in 3 is not the worst odds in the world. Well, that immediately failed. And now they're back to feeling awkward around each other. Amelia tried comparing Jake to a charming moon. I mean, that isn't the worst thing possible to say to a person, right? In either case, it didn't work, and Jake pulled an Amelia by turning his back. Then Jake immediately started talking trash about her uncle's mining skill. Weird choice, Jake. They aren't having a lot of luck starting a relationship with each other. Then they're immediately rewarded with another raid. And it's another genie. What did these two do to the genies to cause them to be so upset? Well, that was a pretty quick raid. One genie isn't exactly much of a threat. That's what happens when you send a delicate wimp to attack the colony by themselves. Alright, now let's get back to finishing this shelter. They've hauled quite a bit of slag back to the base, but they haven't managed to get a smelter built yet, so it's all just sitting there taking up space. Building a smelter is going to have to be a top priority. In the meantime, they haven't started growing any food, and their supply of packaged survival meals is gone. They've been barely surviving off agave paste. But that's also going to run out soon, as they consume all the nearby agave. They've planted a combination of rice and corn. Rice for the short term, corn for the long term. Shaman merchants always carry psychic lances on them. Let's see if they can afford to buy a shock lance. Nope. Unfortunately, they're still scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to tradable resources. They'll have to wait and get one later. Alright, they've cleared out an area where the smelter can go and the blueprint is set up. Now it's time to get this thing built. Right now they don't have enough steel to finish it, which is unfortunate because the slag would produce enough steel to build several things. Well, at least they should get it built soon enough. At least they've managed to finish their exterior wall, except that one door. That requires a bit more steel. It seems like not enough steel is going to haunt them for a while still. It's not huge, so it won't give them a lot of space to expand into, but it's plenty for now, at least until they can start getting more colonists in the family. Oh, another man-hunting pack of small rodents. Small animals and genies seem to be the biggest threat the colony is going to face, at least in the beginning. If only that were actually true. The relationship between Jake and Amelia might end up being a much bigger hurdle. Amelia's been pretty good at tanking small animal bites, so let's leave her to it. Jake, just stay behind the armored woman. And of course, somehow Jake manages to be the one to take damage. Nice job, Jake. We still don't have enough steel for the smelter, but I think it might be a better idea to use what little steel we have on a trap or two. If the colonists don't build better defenses soon, they're going to become overwhelmed when the raids start becoming actual threats. So far they've only experienced rodents and genies, but that grace period will soon be coming to an end. Oh, and it looks like Amelia got that last door built, so they finally have a somewhat secure perimeter. Things are starting to look up. I think it's finally time to move the dining table closer to the paste dispenser. That means we can also move the recreation over, as well as the research table. That way we can double up on seating. We don't have to build extra chairs. Sorry, Pulp. This colony's family only. My hands are tied on this one. Unfortunately, it looks like Jake and Amelia's relationship is still in the pit. I can't really blame them after what's happened. Any romance is going to have to continue to be put on hold. That is, if any romance ever ends up happening. Let's hope so. This is going to be a very short family run. Oh, look at this! A raid that isn't a genie. It's been a pretty uncommon event so far in the life of the colony. Then again, I suppose these are still very early days in what will hopefully be a long run. The Chosculeño pack. That is a mouthful. At least we have one trap ready if we need it. Let's see how it goes. For now though, I think it's better to save the trap and meet the raider out in the field. Jake and Amelia have the advantage with their guns. Well, another quick raid. If our enemies keep sending one at a time, it's going to keep being easy to defend this place. Unfortunately, that is going to soon be coming to an end. While we have a second here, let's decide how our two colonists are going to be using drugs. For now, tea will be their primary option, but beer and ambrosia are also good, and as long as they only use it sparingly. It looks like battery tech has finally been unlocked. They've been researching for a while, but it's been progressing quite slowly. Next up, they're going to unlock smithing tech so they can start working on getting better weapons and armor. The bolt action isn't bad, but they're going to need something that fires a little faster. At this point in the game, a couple of machine pistols would be really handy. There's a chance they'll get them from raids, but let's unlock the tech just in case. We also need to get Jake some armor to protect him against those rats. So let's make our way towards flak armor tech as well. Amelia and Jake have had their sleep interrupted by a raid. This time it's not a genie, but it's still only one pawn. The run's still in the early stages where the storyteller is taking it easy with these really small raids, but as the run progresses, things will start to get pretty crazy. This guy does have pretty high shooting skill and an auto pistol, so let's see how dangerous he ends up being to our two colonists. The three of them have been trading shots for a long time here, and no one is hitting. Jake and Amelia are trying to pull him back out of cover, and it is working, but they just can't seem to make their shots land. The raider keeps retreating and no damage has been dealt, so Jake and Amelia have decided to fall back to the walls of their shelter in order to lure the raider back to their trap. Well, the trap worked perfectly and the raider's down. And it looks like he left a little bit of a neutromine as a gift. I'm not sure if our colonists will have any use for that anytime soon, but it'll be nice to have at some point in the future. Alright, finally the smelter's been finished. It seems like years ago that we put that blueprint down for it. I expected it to be built right away, but it certainly took a lot longer than that. Well, now our two colonists can finally start tackling this pile of slag that they've accumulated so far. Oh, and look, just as this is happening, another cargo pod drops, leaving behind even more slag. The blood bags aren't particularly useful, but that steel will be quite helpful in the near future. It looks like Jake and Amelia are finally growing closer. Their relationship is at the highest point it's been in the run so far. They have gone through quite a bit together, and although the danger hasn't been terribly high, it seems like it should have been enough to create a bond between them. I think it's safe to say that they at least like each other as friends at this point. If we try to use the manual romance button, it gives a 44% chance for success. 44% chance has to be good enough, right? And another failure. In retrospect, 44% doesn't seem like a very good chance. I think this was at least the most romantic attempt yet, with Amelia comparing Jake to a dazzling meadow. Only to have him completely ignore her. I suppose it makes it all the more dramatic and rewarding if they do finally form a romance. At least their friendship is still fairly strong after another failed romance attempt. Although the main goal with research right now is to work towards getting better weapons and armor, I think it's a smart idea to take a small detour and grab solar power, so the colony can transition away from running solely on wood power. That will need to happen before all of the nearby trees get chopped down and they run out of fuel. The interactions between these two colonists really showcases one of the peculiarities about RimWorld. They both have tried to start a relationship with the other pawn even without my intervention. This time Amelia tried to romance Jake by talking about training falcons, which if you ask me is a pretty awesome way to go about it. I assume they both want a relationship with the other, but even still they keep saying no. I'm not sure if that's realistic, and the game's doing a great job, or if it's absolute nonsense and the game's making things unnecessarily difficult. Well, in either case, let's hope they figure it out soon so we can start finally growing the family. The colony's at that point again where it must expand to have room for all the new things that are going to be added. I think the colony has officially graduated from shelter to a cabin. It definitely needs more space, and it could stand to get a little more beauty to increase the impressiveness. But so far, it's keeping the pawns alive and moderately happy, which is good enough for now. This generator is going to produce a fair bit of heat in this room. Since it's already hot outside, this will eventually lead to problems, but in the short term, I think it'll be okay. The passive cooler will do enough to keep the heat down until we can either switch over completely to solar or install a full air conditioner into the wall. The problem with the passive cooler is the same problem with the wood generator. On arid shrubland, there's just not enough wood to sustain it in the long term. It is possible to start planting our own trees, but that isn't something these two are going to pursue. Alright, it's finally time to build the first solar panel. It didn't come a moment too soon, since these two are very quickly running out of wood to use from the nearby area. There's already a battery in the freezer, so everything's all set to switch over to renewable energy. Since there's still the chance for eclipses and other environmental effects, they'll leave the wood generator up, but turned off. That way if something bad happens, they can turn it back on in an emergency. At least for now, it won't be consuming any more wood. It has finally happened. Amelia and Jake have officially formed a romantic relationship. I will say it's a bit of a relief because if this didn't end up happening, it would have been very difficult, or at least very distasteful, to recruit new pawns. Since this is a family-only run, the number one source of new colonists is going to be from our 2 starting pawns. It is possible to recruit pawns that are already related to the 2 starting colonists, but that isn't guaranteed to ever happen, so we'll have to go with the more reliable path. Unfortunately, right now their ideology forbids sleeping in the same bed before marriage, so either we're going to have to reform the ideology, or wait until these pawns get married. Well, they may as well have a little party to celebrate. Let's launch some lanterns into the sky. And it ended up being a beautiful party to mark the occasion. Something so beautiful must be balanced out with something equally horrifying. This is RimWorld after all. Jake has a bit of medical skill, but it isn't great, and in order to keep the family healthy, they're going to need to get that medical skill higher. The easiest way to do that is going to be to practice. Instead of just waiting around for colonists to become injured, Jake is going to offer his services to other people, whether they need it or not. Okay, admittedly that's pretty messed up, but hey, Jake needs that medical skill. Peppa, on behalf of Jake and Amelia, I am sorry for this. I promise they won't kill you. And to top it all off, immediately following this barbaric act, the 2 colonists have decided to get married. I really hope this isn't what caused them to decide to get married. Oh well, at least progress is being made toward the family goal. It's interesting that immediately following what Jake did to Peppa, the Decay Wasters attacked. Peppa is a member of the Decay Wasters, and you have to wonder if the raider has arrived to try to rescue her. I'm not sure who we should be rooting for during this raid, but I think our hands are tied and we have to side with Jake and Amelia. Sora, the would-be rescuer, only brought a club, which is not even close to a match for a bolt-action rifle and a revolver. When Sora gets close, Amelia and Jake just retreat and then continue firing. I don't think Sora really stood a chance here. It's kind of a sad ending for an honorable act. I guess sometimes the colonists are the bad guys in RimWorld. Oh well, time to move on. A couple of pigs have decided to join. It would be better if they were alpacas, but that's okay. They'll work for now. Let's set up a caravan hitching spot and tie them up just outside the base for now. I think in the long term we can build a pen for them, but that can wait. We can feed the pigs the leftover waste and let them reproduce. Let's see just how many pigs we can end up getting. Oh, and would you look at that. Peppa is being held in one room and pigs in the other. It's a bit of an odd coincidence. It's already time to let Peppa return home. She played an important role in the colony, and I think for that reason alone she should be allowed to go. Jake ended up getting his medical skill up to level 7, which is not terrible. It may be necessary to do something like this a couple more times to try to get that medical skill up to around 10, but 7 is going to work for now. They've just finished fertility procedures, which is going to be necessary for the long-term growth of the colony. We can't expect Amelia to just keep giving birth to children. Instead, it'll be much easier to try to use growth fats to grow children. That way, Amelia doesn't have to deal with the burden of carrying a child around, which is dangerous in ideal circumstances, but can be lethal out on a Rim planet. It does take quite a bit more food to use growth fats, but that's a cost that's very much worth paying. Fertility procedures will also allow us to get around the restriction of not sharing a bed before marriage. But since the marriage is likely to happen soon anyway, this might not be necessary in the end. We will see. Thanks for watching the first episode of the Family Only Run. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I started a Patreon if you're interested. The information for that is in the video description. I'm going to try to release at least one episode of this series a week until it's finished. Until then, have a good one and see you for the next video.